so I was diagnosed as stage 2.
Starting there, tell me what it felt like when you first realized, like, okay, I can really lift this weight. Like when you hit the 230 on the deadlift, when you hit 40, 45 pounds on the chest press, what was that feeling?
Well, you have to start off. I remember when we first started training and I was doing all baby stuff because my knees were everything. And I remember you had Darcy, right? Darcy was already on the squat rack and I was like, there is no way I'm ever going to do that right kind of stuff. And you kept telling me, oh, you'll get there. You'll get there. And I was like, okay, no. Do you see how much weight's on that deadlift rack? I'm like, no. And, over the progression, when, starting to really work up the muscles, knees stopped hurting. I noticed little things like traveling. I could sling my bag into the overhead. Okay. It wasn't like little things. And then one day, right, we got on the squat rack, and I remember asking you, are you sure I'm going to do this? And you were like, let's do it. When we got to those PRs, just realizing that my body could do those things, and it was just amazing to me. You had asked me in the beginning if I would ever be able to do that. I never saw myself doing those things. But as I did, I also found things that used to be hard or heavy are no longer hard or heavy. My energy really went up. So it's more of, like now I can't really sit on the couch for too long. I'm like, let's go, let's do something. So the energy came back. My mind was clear. I just felt myself getting into a more, I don't know, I felt like my mind, my spirit, my body was strong.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm an engineer. What I do now is I am a project manager or program manager. I work with a number of projects nationwide. I'm always traveling, oversighting some very busy and important federally funded projects. And sometimes the work there's a lot. There's a lot of hours, there's a lot of stress when you're going through it, deliverables and deadlines and milestones that need to be met. And sometimes, just dealing with the overall challenges, it just, some of those challenges really keep you up and keep you on your toes, thinking about what to do next and how to move past.
You just mentioned that training helps some of that.
You got it out. And instead of taking it to bed with me, and, like for me, a lot of times, I'd be thinking, sitting at, what am I going to do tomorrow? What do I need to battle first? What needs to be, one of the things about by the time I was done training, a lot of that was, can wait till tomorrow morning. So I was diagnosed as stage 2. And so it was, not early, but again, not late. So I think thankfully there, just by losing some of the weight, I was able to feel it sooner than maybe I would have.
Talk to me about the time where, it was maybe about a week or two that you still came in for that kettlebell class and how you felt that day.
Oh, so that was during testing. We were doing a flow class, and I knew that would be my last one before it. And I thought I'm going to come in, do that flow class as my last thing for right now. And I remember we came in and did that flow, about 4 of us, and it really felt good. And it gave me a little bit of a spark to say, to go into this, really test my bag. And I remember telling the group what was going on, feeling like that was the last time I was going to see the gym. And actually, and just felt like, I was going into another journey, another fight, something that I needed to do.
What was the turning point for you to make you want to build the gym in the garage and then continue the training as you were going?
So, when you start the chemo, you can't be around people, you've got to be careful, and I miss the gym. I miss working out. And I wanted, you keep trying to find some normalcy. You can't do a lot of things, I was working from home, no longer traveling, no longer doing a lot of things. I couldn't go to a restaurant and eat. So a lot of the things that I really loved doing had been cut out. So I figured one day I saw a squat rack on Facebook Marketplace.
Yep.
And I texted you, and I was like, what do you think, right? Cleared the garage area and got it. Decided that if I could have a little bit of normalcy, feel a little bit like my old self while I'm going through this, why not? So I got the rack and I got a few things to go with it and set up a little home gym that could simulate some of the stuff that we used to do in the real gym. That's kind of how it started, and you agreed to come. We agreed the whole distance thing, and we had the garage door open, and we were as safe as we could be as we, went through the whole thing. those sessions, like again, you met me where I was. You know, some days it was easy, and some days it was hard, but we did what we could, and it was just a little bit normal. It just made me feel grounded from it. Like it took a minute away from everything else that I was going through. It's nice.
Yeah, tell me a little story about how you ended up in
Oh
Lifetime.
gosh,
How-
so you know, like everything, 2021, my youngest son graduated from high school, went off to college, and did an empty nester. And you know, in that moment, you know, your life is really dedicated to your kids. So in that moment, it was like I did not have a life. I was not sure what weekends looked like, you know, especially with him playing soccer and stuff. And so it was one of those just sit around, not do anything. I really got it into a funk of just, you know, not really eating healthy and never cooking things, and not exercising, putting on some weight, and just really trying to figure out what life looks like. And so my son came home, you know, after his first year of college, and I guess I had put on some pounds. And, you know, if anyone knows my son, you know, typical son fashion, he's like, oh no, Mom, you're not getting fat, not on my dime, I'm signing you up for Lifetime. And we're all going. So with that, he signed us up for Lifetime. And in true form, he goes into Lifetime and does this thing. And, you know, I'm trying to figure out the gym, where do you start? What do you do? So I guess at the time, you know, Lifetime has a lot of classes, and I had seen some people do kettlebells, and I thought, okay, I'll sign up for the kettlebell. What does this look like? Class of 6, how bad could it be? I can stand in the back and check out if I don't like it, right? Sure enough, I show up for my class, and all 5 get checked out before I got there, right? So it's you and me, and I can't run out the back.
Solo.
Never forget, you're like, okay, this is a kettlebell, blah, blah, blah. You start going, here's swings, here's that. And I don't know, it wasn't even 2 minutes in, I was sitting on the ground, huffing and puffing, going, not for me, I'm out. So that was really how I got there. Right? There was really no rhyme or reason. It was just looking for something to do.
So what made you take the chance and start actually personal training?
You know, I'm a true believer that, you know, in life, you know, God really guides your next steps, right? And that day I really couldn't tell you, but I remember when we kind of like sat down in the middle of the gym floor, and it was like, okay, my heart rate's at like 160. I'm huffing and puffing. I'm done. Next, you know. And I remember, you know, you were like, okay, we sat down, and I told you, I never forget, I told you, I'm just a whole hot mess, right?
Yes.
And, you know, you started
reminded
talking
me that over the course of years.
I still do. You know, and I remember you telling me, you know, about working out and, you know, getting back, and I said, all right, fine. And you said, just give me a chance. And I was like, okay, well, how hard can this be? I'll give you a chance. And after about 4 weeks, I'll just be like, okay, then we'll see that work. And that was really the whole intention when I started. It really was, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know, you know, I didn't know where to begin. So it kind of offered me the, all right, let's do it.
So within the time frame of your first 3 months, where did you start to see the change? What made you stick with it? What changed for you mentally, emotionally, and when did you start to feel yourself getting stronger?
You know, I think it was more, you know, the first 6 months. Remember, I would weigh myself, getting that in.
No, please, wait, pause there. Please tell that story.
So, you know, you're big on how much do you weigh, and let me take your measurements so I can see your progression. And I was like, you're not weighing me, you're not measuring me. Oh no, not happening, just not. And at the time I was 200 plus. I mean, I'll just be honest at this point, right? You were not going to see that scale say 200 plus.
Right.
You know, the first 6 months, everything hurt. My knees hurt, my shoulder hurt, my elbow hurt, my wrist hurt. I mean, it was, you know, it was difficult. I mean, I was, you know, over 50, I was hot, menopausal, I was frustrated, you know, but I stayed with it. I mean, honestly, primarily, one of the things that I really found was it really worked the stress out of me. Right? That was the big thing, right? You know, I'd come in, work out, I'd go home, I'd be starving, you know, maybe an hour of TV, and I would sleep all night. I think that was the first change. Like, I would sleep. And I didn't go to bed thinking about what happened during the day, what I need to do tomorrow. I was just too tired to think about all that other stuff. So I think that was the first change.
How many times a week were you training? What made you train 3 times a week?
Well, we started at 2, remember? We started at 2, it was Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it wasn't until after the 6 months, it wasn't until after the 6 months we went to 3.
Okay.
You know, it was like I felt that I was strong enough to be able to do 3 times a week and really wanted to do 3 times a week.
That sounds like you've gained a bit of confidence in
Oh, a
yourself,
lot.
right?
A
Can you
lot.
talk to me about that a little bit?
You know, I think, you know, for a long time, you know, especially when you're getting into that, you know, 50s, menopausal, grumpy, hot, sweaty. I think sometimes, well, at least for me, maybe not everybody, for me, you kind of start to get a step back. And what I started to gain was a lot more confidence, not only personal, but professional. I know who I am now. I found the value of who I am. And that was very important. I had started to lose that. And I think for a long time, too, as a mom to two active boys, it's all about their lives. Their soccer games, or their this, or their that. And so all of a sudden, without having that anchor, I was no longer that hands-on mom. They were gone. It was all just about me. And so what I really started to, as I started to shed some of the weight and started to feel more confident in myself, was just realizing the value that I bring in my own life, and in my own circle, and in my own profession. And so that was really a big thing. And that was a good thing to find it, to know who I was.
So talk to me about, going from not really lifting, not knowing how to all the way to some of the stuff we've done. Cleans, presses, snatching, the overhead presses with the barbell, cleaning presses with the barbell, etc.
Well, I can't. And when I come to I can't do it, no, I'm not doing it. What do you want me to do? And as we start getting into the dynamics, things are, you kind of progress. It's like something new and it's fun. I think a lot of it became fun. And, we used to joke when we were doing a lot of the kettlebells flows. Like, what's next? What did I do? And, I'd screw them up in the middle and start again.
I got that blooper on camera.
It became a fun dynamic. One of the things I did notice is all of a sudden the cardio aspect. My heart rate would kind of get up there and I'd have to stop to a minute. And so then there was that cardio aspect, especially when the kettlebells came in. And I didn't realize that, you can still go slow and steady, but the heavier things were more cardiovascular came into it. And so for a while it was like, well, this is great, it's heavy, but I don't know, it became more of a, I look forward to those times. I look forward to what new and fun and creative things we were going to do. And, not all of them went off as smoothly as they were supposed to go, right? Some things it was like, this is not working, and then we would go back to it in a couple of months. But, I guess throughout the journey, it was never the same thing. It was never the same exercise. It was never the same routine. And so I think that's what kept it fun. What we do. It's easy.
So for anyone that is in the gym that are not confident in what they're doing, or folks that have been to the gym but don't actually frequent it anymore, they have their membership but don't go, what is some of the advice you would give to those folks that were in your position that came in and decided, okay, I'm going to take a class or I'm going to grab a machine or two? What would the advice be for you to those?
That's the hard part, right? Because I'm lucky enough that I was able to afford a trainer. I've been blessed with having you as my trainer. It would be great if you could find a trainer to get those things, but not everybody can. So I know when you walk into a gym, it's intimidating because there are people in there who have been lifting for a long time, and I would say just finding someone who can help them continue to get them to speed, and then doing that at stages. Right? Once you get used to something, finding something to do it again, so somebody can do something else. But I think the biggest thing that I have to say is finding a good trainer. Because finding somebody who encourages you, who's going to help you. Sometimes when those aches and pains, it could very well be that you're not doing what you're doing right. Or maybe you need to increase other muscles so that the aches and pains can go away, right? So I think the other thing is really learning how to do it right. And for me, I think there's a lack of, especially women over 50, there's not a lot of attention on how to get us healthy when we have to. And then finding somebody who's going to get us there. And I think sometimes maybe gyms can focus a little bit more on those women who walk into the gym and look around and don't know where to start, don't know what to do, are really insecure. Find a way to bring them in and to give them exactly what it is they're looking for, because it's really easy. I think if I hadn't met you, it would have been very easy to just stop going. And so, like I said, again, for me, that kettlebell class where no one showed up, thank you very much, was so important to really, this journey. But if it had not happened, I could really see myself being discouraged and just kind of
Well, but one last thing, if you can go back and talk to Justine that had walked into that gym that day, what would you tell her?
Don't take that kettlebell.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. What would I tell her? Maybe you should have started this journey a little bit early. But you know, it doesn't matter when you start. You know, going through menopause before that, this was really working out really helped with a lot of the symptoms. So I would really tell Justine that walked into the gym that goodness she signed up for the kettlebell class. I would go back and I would, you know, go back to my son and say thank you for getting me off that couch, you know. And he was one of my biggest supporters. You know, every time I would send him videos, you know, he would come back with, way to go, Mom, you're crushing it.
Shout out to Jaden.
Yay, Jaden. He would, you know, he was one of my biggest supporters of, you know, of getting me in the gym and making sure I continue to work out. And even now, you know, continue to work out. I rang my bell last week and he was there. And, you know, I remember working out during my chemo and he was like, yep, you're still crushing it. You know, you're still doing it. And so I feel so much more confident today. So much more energized today, so much more healthy in my journey. Don't get me wrong, I still have fears. I'm still working through, you know, what comes next. I just feel so much healthier than I was 5 years ago. So much more confidence. I know who I am. I know who I am as a person. I know what I can do as a person. And I think that that is something I'm so grateful when I walk into the gym every day.
I think last thing I'm closing here is never too late to start.
Never too late to start.
Never too late to start.
And I think too there are no limitations on what the body can do. You just have to allow yourself to grow. And give your time, give yourself time to grow. Give yourself grace in the process.
Mr. Steve, thank you so much. You are the bestest.
Thank you.
Love this. Great,
Love it.
great.
And as we continue our journey.
Yes.